Welcome everyone to Test Masters Online, Ask the Experts Roundtable with today's guests, Conway, Paul Grizzaffi, Thomas Haver, and Mark Andrade. And all of my speakers today are Contest NYC conference speakers. And I want to introduce you to and invite you to the Contest NYC, which is a conference that I run as part of my organization, Global Quality Leadership Institute and Test Masters Academy. We run the Contest NYC. This is the second time I'm going to run it. It's this year. It's in November 14 to 16, and it's in New York. And we're gonna I'm gonna show the link in the Slack later. So please join us because face-to-face communications are the best. But today we have all those 4 guests, and I welcome them to test about test automation. Can you introduce yourself, all of you, so we know who you are? Just, I can name names. Paul, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Paul Grizzaffi. I'm a principal automation architect at Magenic. We're a consulting company. I've been doing automation for about 25 years now, and I've been with Magenic for almost 2.
And Kate.
So I'm a quality engineer at Atlassian, specifically for the Trello product. I've been there for about a year. I've been doing testing with some automation for a number of years now. And before that, I was a Unix and Linux sysadmin for quite a while.
Cool. And Thomas.
Hi, my name is Thomas Haver. I'm a senior application architect for Huntington National Bank. Before I worked at Huntington, I worked as a developer, requirements analyst, and tester for Nationwide Insurance.
And Marco.
Hey, so my name is Marco Andrade. I'm from Brazil, and I work as a QA automation engineer for TopTal for the past 2 years. And yeah.
Perfect. So altogether, your test automation experience is probably a lot. Over 30 years or something. And please tell me, what is happening with test automation? Is it dying? Is it thriving? Is it thrown away, saying, what is it? What's automation as of today? How have you seen, what's the progress with it? What do you see right now?
Well, I can start. As for me, I think it's the opposite. It's growing. Before we have a lot of testers and they didn't care about automation much. And they see that they have to spend tons of time doing the tests manually. And they start to understand more the reason behind automation. So I think it's the opposite. People are understanding why we need automation, and a lot of people that I know that were manual testers started to attend courses and conferences to try to understand more how to code so they could automate their job and focus on what matters.
Great. Thomas, what do you think?
Well, I think we've moved beyond the sort of the recognition of automation as something that is needed. And we're now in the state of people having experiences, both positive and negative, and trying to overcome those as we adjust as a community. So for instance, you can bring in a fantastic tool, but if you don't have the right people or they don't follow the processes that you set up, then things can sort of fall apart. So I think what's coming up and what's important is as we make more adoptions for machine learning and AI, that we take the lessons learned from the prior states. We're doing primarily UI-based testing, web services, our services testing, and apply those lessons learned, what have failed and what has been successful, to any new technologies that we want to bring about in the community.
And Paul, what do you think?
Well, I see a lot of broken automation initiatives out there. A lot of times we're brought in to help rehabilitate something that didn't work out the first time for one reason or other. but I see that it's just barely starting now, but I'm starting to see people starting to think about the business aspects of automation, because there are business value aspects. A lot of times we jump in and say, well, we're going to automate because we're Scrum or because we're DevOps. And that's not the reason to automate. The reason to automate is to provide some sort of appreciable value for the effort that we're putting in so that we can help our company meet its business goals. And I'd like to see more of that. But I am seeing a lot of abandoned initiatives. But when I see abandoned initiatives now, it's not so much automation doesn't work here. It's, oh, wait, we didn't do it right. And then sometimes it's, let's go back to the drawing board, or sometimes it's, well, this tool didn't work, let's get another tool. And then they wind up with the same sort of problems they had before.
And Kate, what do you see?
To me, it feels like we're still trying to find a good balance between automation and manual and exploratory testing. I've seen a lot of, we need to automate all the things early on, and that approach led to a lot of maintenance, a lot of headaches, and a lot of frustrations across the board. I think now folks are trying to take a step back and say, what makes sense to automate? What's the high value pieces to automate? And I think the other important thing is we went from, we need to automate all the things into, well, if we carefully automate, then there's a whole skill set around what those things are, and that's very similar to the same skill set for manual and exploratory testing. So I think that there's a lot more collaboration happening than what happened in the initial wave of automate all the things. But I still think we haven't quite figured out like where that line is.
Thank you. And it's a great segue into tester skills, because when I was a director of QA, we had a separate automation team. And sometimes people, and then what happened is we split into product units, and people from outside of our department, QA department, considered those automation specialists as testers. And, but they were not hired as testers, they were hired as the tool specialists. And probably the different skill sets, that was a few years ago, about 15 years ago. What is the landscape now? Do we consider automation specialists as testers? Are they testers, or are they just developers who just do the test automation frameworks and this is their specialty? What is the test automation specialist as of today? What skills do they have?
So I think those are two different questions. And the first one is, do you consider automation specialist testers? And the answer is maybe. They might be testers. They might be skilled testers who have taken on an additional set of skills. So now they're testers who can do automation. Or perhaps they are developers that said, I'm done with product development and I want to do this other activity. It seems cool. It seems fun. I don't have any specific career testing ability. I haven't done that, right? It's not an experience that I have. So I don't know that you call them testers or not testers as a discipline. It's really more of a role that they're playing and a value they're adding to the team. When you talk about skills that automation people should have, traditionally they should have a coding experience, because on some level, even if you're not doing a traditional programming language, you're still sequencing instructions, and you still have a lot of the code and software development types of activities of creating, debugging, supporting, storing, releasing, delivery, all of those types of things. So software development skills are absolutely something key there, but you have to have an affinity for testing as well, because you're going to be testing your own stuff. So there has to be some amount of testing acumen there, but you also have to be very sensitive to what your users, ultimately the testers, or usually the testers, are going to want or they're going to need. So if you don't understand what their job is and how they go about their job, you're not going to be able to do as good of you're not going to be able to provide as much value because you kind of be writing with the wrong hand, if you will.
Yeah, in that note, what you want to avoid is basically delivering this beautiful test or test architecture, and it doesn't actually solve the problem. It doesn't actually do what was intended. And I think that everybody has probably had that experience.
Absolutely.
I think from my perspective, I think you can have someone working on automation that's either a developer that really does have a tester mindset and understands how to get those requirements, or you could have a tester that's really interested in expanding their skill set and they want to learn how to do automation. But the interest and the curiosity have to be there no matter where their perspective is starting out, but they need to be able to kind of wear both hats and occasionally go over to product and say, okay, like, am I doing the right thing? And maybe even documentation. So it's kind of like more of an interest than it is necessarily like they have to be rooted in a specific team.
Absolutely. It's a strong point about the documentation as well. I didn't think to mention that, but that's absolutely critical to be able to document that stuff.
Cool. And Thomas, what do you think? Because I know that you do a lot of education activities, projects in your organization. What's your take on, is automation specialist a separate role? Is it a separate person? Who are they?
Yeah, based upon my own experience, I think it just matters the situation. So I support my entire company's automation effort. So each business segment within my company has taken a sort of different approach because they have their own specific needs. So we have individuals who have become solely focused on automation. That's what they do 100% of the time. And these are people that were formerly either business analysts or testers or developers, and they've made up that role. And then we've got others who were originally testers and they still take part in exploratory testing and all of the management and planning process, but they also write automation. And so I think it's just about finding that right fit. Now, there certainly is an absolute need to have at least an individual or a few individuals associated with an organization that can play an architecture role, because you're going to need someone to handle those duties of adjusting for the technologies that are coming out, looking to make sure that you can scale and be successful. But I found that through training, as long as someone is motivated and capable, then you can fill in the gaps and that person can be successful regardless of what their original background is. And for a good tester, we need someone who's going to be analytical as well as curious.
All right. And Marco.
Yeah, I agree with that. And on top of that, I want to say that depends on both what the company needs and what the resource the company has. So sometimes the company doesn't have the resource of having a tester that has also the skills as a analyst, but they could have some backend developers to back him up. So you have to think that every case it's unique, and you have to take the best of this. Sometimes could be scenarios that the company does not even need automation, or the automation doesn't fit because they don't even have a quality culture behind it. So definitely will not work. So you have to analyze everything. And sometimes, like, I think the best scenario would be a tester that has also the skills to develop. So he could have the key eyes, but he can always pair with others. And also we can have situations that we have, for example, a startup, they don't have a tester there, but they have some developer that has more curiosity and has more knowledge regarding testing, and he could take this role as him, and he would drive the quality, making sure that the unit tests are made by others developers and cover the case scenarios and everything. So I think it's the company necessity and also the resource they have.
Cool. And we are joined here by Juan Delgado. Hi, Juan.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Sorry for joining late.
And please introduce yourself because you're part of the panel, but you came late, so I want to know who you are. So for everybody else, what do you do?
Okay, well, my name is Juan Delgado. I am a software engineer for automation and a consultant. Currently, I'm working for a T-Mobile in Android devices, and I really work a lot doing a proposal in order to convert that manual projects to automated project. In some cases, it's doable. In other cases, it's not doable because the tools, because the resources, because the time. But basically, we're trying to, in my experience, or where we're here, we're trying to automate, or more than automate, we're trying to save time or to innovate the process that our clients have it. So that is the main goal, trying to innovate and trying to save time for them in order to they have more time to research or do another thing with the time for the resources that are going to do testing.
So Juan, the question right now that we're discussing is test automation is a different role from testing, or is that the tester with different skill sets? In your opinion, who is the test automation specialist?
Well, for me, and in my experience, all the test automation resources that we would like to join in the team, they would like to have a strong base or experience in the manual testing, because if they don't have experience in the projects when you need to convert some kind of process to automation, so that is when I'm going to fail. So that is the thing that I'm going to talk about in the conference, and I think that it's a really good thing to put in the table in the conference, because it's not just about to talk about the tools, it's more about to talk about how you convert a process to an automated, and the resources need to have the skill set in the manual thing, because they need to know exactly what they need to do, or they need to analyze the process. This is the most important. They need to know knowledge about the process. It's not just about to have the skill set to automate something.
So what I'm hearing right now, again, every roundtable surprised me, honestly. I'm hearing something different. A few years ago, test automation specialists used to kind of be the kind of backend developers in a way, designing their frameworks and serving the, oftentimes they were supposed to serve the QA team, providing them tools. What I'm hearing right now is not the case anymore, is the automation specialists are taking the more business-facing role. And they need to have the skills, so they're no longer tools creator, like you just give me your requirements, I do everything for you. They are facing the business. This is what Paul said. Or they are making business decisions, or they talking to product. And how is that? I'm seeing it's something new. I didn't hear that before, honestly. So this is the reason I am having those discussions, because something is changing. And it's probably because of the agile culture. I'm not sure what it is, so maybe you tell me. I'm kind of thinking with the more split responsibility and accountability for quality, is everybody kind of taking a role, taking a stab at, hey, I'm accountable too. I'm not here in the back office kind of designing the tools that you want me to, but I need to understand what I'm doing, right? I need to understand what the product does. Is that the case? That's where we are right now? Tell me.
I think so. I mean, I think it's about kind of putting some of the human back in automation, because I think there was a period of time where it was a lot more common to have requirements like thrown over the wall at the person automating, whereas now it's a much more thoughtful, collaborative approach, because that's the way that automation is successful. We found that when it's just do these things, it comes back and no one wants to use it, no one wants to maintain it, it doesn't have the right things, et cetera, et cetera. So those skill sets about going cross-organizational, cross-functional, to like really understand what the needs are, you know, those are the skill sets that's making automation more successful and people less grumbly about it when it's implemented.
And Paul, what do you see?
Well, you got to understand who you're talking to here, right? You're talking to a panel of people who you have found appropriate to put on a panel and to speak at a conference. So we are probably in the minority from a thought process standpoint, but we're also probably the ones pushing the envelope the most. So
yes,
it doesn't surprise me that we have similar answers, but when you go out, especially as a consultant, and you talk to different people about what their expectations are, what they've been trying to do, what's worked, what hasn't, we're not as far along as we'd like to be, sort of as a discipline, if you will. But I think we're headed in the right direction because we're talking about these things in public forums like panels and conferences and blogs and things like that. So I think the direction's the right direction, and it's a good, healthy direction. And more people are adopting it because you can see when you go to conferences and people ask you questions, I'm getting I'm getting more questions around whole team automation. How do we get more things done? Hey, the developers are participating in this. How do I choose a language for what my automation is going to be? Things that show a more cohesive and collaborative team approach, where it's not just automation as a QA or a tester activity anymore. And I think that's a good, healthy, positive direction to move in.
And Thomas, what are you saying?
Well, when I initially began at my current company, I was probably 90% code, 10% sort of meetings, collaboration that occurs, and now it's more flipped. And I think the reason for that is whether we're talking adopting agile processes or just instituting automation as a part of that, what we found is the automation will help amplify the existing process issues that the teams may have that you want to work with. And so it becomes much more about how do you solve those process problems so that way you can get the most value out of the change that you want to bring about. And so now most of my time is spent trying to connect the business to the development teams, how to have effective collaboration between the developer, the requirements analyst, and the tester in deciding what is the most efficient way to use automation, either from a test or a task perspective. And so the people element is really the most important part. And I think as Paul mentioned, you're sort of a biased response from the individuals who you've selected on here, because we have a very forward facing component of this. Just being willing to speak at a conference sort of puts us in that role versus someone who's, very much interested just in the coding, the back end aspect of it. But I do think it is important to get the most value from it because it has to be a whole team approach rather than something that's ancillary or just after the fact that, oh, by the way, we also have automation. It should be something that's an upfront concern.
And Marco, what's your thought of it? I'm going to tell a little bit about you. I invited you to this conference after, but what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think I agree with Paul. I don't know exactly the reason behind it that's flippant, and maybe could be our perspective, since we are a selective group here, that we see that these are happening, but maybe in outside world is not like that. But definitely, I think is the right direction we should be going. And I don't think it's cause of agile, and I even think that the talk about agile is dead is a really good talk when they say the purpose about agile was totally different when they created, but this is another subject. And but I think that our role here is to evangelize people in company to go to this right direction. So even though I don't know how many percentage of companies and people are thinking like that, but I think the point here is for us to push to this direction, in my opinion.
Cool. And just to give you a little background, so yes, when I receive proposals from people, or I see what they're talking about, and I invite them to speak at my conference, and I talk to them, I'm seeing that evangelism and the quality mindset and the passion for the quality. And I don't know if it's coincidental or not, but I think over 50% of sessions in this year's conference is about automation. And I see a trend. I'm seeing a trend. It used to be, hey, I'm a tools person, to, hey, I am gonna lead, I'm gonna lead the team quality, and automation is part of what we do because we want to make some processes more effective. And it's a team thing. And what I'm seeing is all of you guys have a technical background, and yet you're speaking at the conference of, Test Masters Academy, which we used to have this fight that there is this skill test and that there's this automation tools, and now it's merging. And now the skill testers become automators, and they promote the good quality in a team and in a business. Juan, you agreeing, because I'm hearing what you said is exactly that. It's the processes, it's the innovation, right? Where you put the automation. So it's not a goal in itself. It's
Yes, at the end, I think that is like a solution, because sometimes when companies don't use automation and they want to implement the automation in a project, they think that we can automate everything, or they will do everything with one click, and that is also not true. So most of the project that implement automation, or not most of them, but some of them fails because it's not, they never made a good analysis about the process, about the tools, about the technology. And in that case, we need to be really careful about, we can automate this process, but it will take this time, and your return of investment will be in 1 year or 2 years, depends of how many resources, what is the technology, the tool that you're going to use. So we need to be really very, very careful about that. So we can automate, yes, but we need to be really careful about to do a really, really good analysis about the return of investment, and the client they really have the expectation, because they think that when they start to automate, they will do it in 2 or 3 months, and everything will be done with a click, and that is not true. In most of the cases, it's not true.
So it's a very interesting point that test automation is a business decision. It's an investment, and it's a long-term investment. Would you kind of all agree to that? This is how it differs from any type of manual testing, however you want to call it. Is it exploratory testing? Is it, however, like different companies call something different. But the idea is, hey, testing, I can just sit at the computer and just do it for you. Where automation is the opposite of it, is that it's a business decision. It's like a product development. It's a product, right? Automation suite is a product that has product owners that have, business decision to be made, how much we invest in it, how much we're spending on it. And it has a long-term, first of all, it's a long-term investment, and the outcomes are long-term as well, right? So there is a lot of business decisions involved in talking about automation. Would you agree to that? Because I think this is also something that people don't realize when they say, automate everything. It's not like you jump in computer and automate everything, right? And I know Thomas is kind of smiling now. So
I agree that those are all aspects, but they're aspects that are often missed when beginning an automation endeavor, because frequently people that are undertaking an automation endeavor that don't have the background or on the coaching or don't have the expertise in-house, they don't treat it like a software development initiative, which it really is. You have to treat it like a software development initiative, otherwise you're going to have a bad time. And you hit the nail on the head with the product owner and all those other things. Those are all sort of aspects or possible implementations of an endeavor to deliver this software to the people that are going to get value from it, which is generally the delivery team, but more specifically often the testing team.
Thomas, what are you saying?
Well, up front, it's easier for companies to adopt when they see it as a line item on the budget of, this is going to solve this problem, like any product like Paul mentioned. But I think ultimately the way you have to view automation is an investment in the people, because if you are taking these tasks out of the hands of people saying, all right, this is something redundant or time consuming, or we're not able to do it unless we have automation, therefore we're freeing up people's time to do something more valuable with automation. So that means you are now viewing the people at your company as an asset, saying that the time that they now have can be done, they can do something more valuable with it. And I think that's really the approach. Is one, it's something that it's another, not just a tool, but another product that you have to develop, but also you have to plan for what are your people going to be doing? Like what sort of value added activities now that we're freeing it up? Because it's very common, and I get this at every conference, where I'll have managers come up and they want to do this, or I'll meet with other managers within my company, and their ultimate goal is not necessarily to free up people's time. Their goal is to reduce the number of people. What they call them is resources. That's the dehumanizing word that they use, like to reduce the number of resources we have, or move as much as we can, say, off-site, offshore. And I say that's the wrong approach, but I don't tell them they're wrong from the outset. I say, it's like, consider it's like the more valuable activities that you can have the people engage in, and that's really should be your end state.
Okay. And Marco, what are you saying?
I think every extreme is really bad. So having no automation is not good, and have everything automated is impossible, because you're never going to achieve that. So I think that both extremes are not good, and we should find a term. For example, I worked for Bloomingdale's a couple of years ago, and they have the regression to test all the website, and they are a seller from Macy's, and they make a lot of money every day. So before the people in the United States wake up and start shopping, we have this early regression on the website to make sure that everything is working. And it took around 1 hour and 30 minutes every day. And we, every day, a different QA do that, so we don't get exhausted, especially because of time zone. And so we did this every day, and I started to talk to the manager and to everybody in charge there to say that we needed to automate some key process. So even though we tested it thoroughly, we are humans after all, and we could miss something, and we could make mistake that will cost a lot of money. So at least making sure that you can add items to the cart, and then you can finish and purchase and things like that, it's really valuable. So it should be automated. So after months of talks there, I could finally introduce one piece of code of a major business there. So they see it running and make sure that would have the same results as the person in charge of testing it, to make sure that the tool works. So we are having both the regression test and also the tool to see if it matches, if it finds something, it reflects on the failures. And they saw the value on that, and they could start reducing things that we were supposed to do. So instead of checking all of those things, some of paths were not needed anymore because we have automation. So I think you should put on a balance, because sometimes the cost of implementing it, it would pay itself because of the amount of time that you save for the person, and the reliability, the confidence of the tool testing it, because the machine, you test it over and over, and human could make a mistake, could be in a bad day and just skip something.
And Kate, what do you think?
So I think, one of the key things to it being a business decision is the fact that it's a decision, and the decision of what to automate is a big deal. That kind of goes back to like a couple of the stories here, where like if you can, there's a value prop here. Okay, so a tester is not spending an hour and a half every day doing this, so that they can go off and do this other high value thing where they have an expertise and where they can actually, do things. A lot of companies go out and they're like, we're going to do regression tests for anything, but that might not be the right decision because it may be that you can roll back really easily. So regressions aren't expensive, or maybe you just don't regress in a lot of areas. But there's a couple areas that would be, you know, high value to automate. So it's about those trade-offs and those discussions. And so like, it's kind of easy for the business to say, okay, we're going to automate all the things. But the reality is this is what we're going to deliver initially. And this is why we're doing it, to, you know, because we're going to put those testers on these other things, or it's going to free them up to do these pieces, or, you know, whatever is valuable there. And, you know, instead of kind of going all in on everything needs to be automated, and then everybody gets disappointed because the tests are not, people aren't confident in the tests because you're trying to write automation for things that really shouldn't be automated. The other thing, the other point is that maintenance of the test have to be taken into account. So that really does lend itself to being part of like a real software development project, because it's funny after that day one, you hit that button and things, you know, and you have to analyze as you go and decide, is this still the right test? Is this still the right area to be doing? Like what should we be doing here?
Cool.
And to further on to Kate's comments there, yes, you may be freeing up some testers to do some jobs, but now you've got someone who is maintaining the automation, who is writing the automation. So it's not really this free activity. There's some work that goes in there. And in some cases, it might just be better to bring another tester on instead of automating something. So that's, I'm a heretic when I say things like that to my discipline, but looking at it with the business hat on, it's what's the right thing to do to help meet the company goals. A lot of times it's automation, a lot of times it's not. What's the value proposition?
Cool. And Juan, what do you think?
Well, I totally agree, because at the end, even if the test automation tester need to do something, and we need to analyze data and everything, if we only think as the automation tester as a developer, for him will be really difficult to analyze the data, to analyze the result, or to check the whole process. So I really agree that in all the automation, we need an investment. We need people that need to not just develop. He need to analyze the result. He need to go more than that. And at the end, that is, in my opinion, always the test automation, the test automation, or the tester that is going to work with automation, it should not be only a developer. She need to have some experience about when we're talking about testing. And another thing, we need to educate the client, because sometimes the client think that, yes, my process is automated, so I don't need resources, or I don't need, or only I will do the click and everything will be done, and even the result will be there. But it's not just like that. So sometimes we need to explain to the customers that the test automation, what's involved, and even what they need to do it manually.
Okay, great.
On top of that, I just want to say one more thing, a real example, so maybe it will be more clear as well. That depends on what the company really needs. On Bloomingdale's, for example, they have some promotional page that they create a page for some sort of promotional that could be there for a week or a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months. It depends on the product. But this is an example of things that you do not want to automate, because it's going to be there for a short period and then it's not going to be there anymore. So it makes no sense you spend a lot of time and effort to automate there, and in a couple of weeks disappear and you have to delete all your code. So this maintenance is really important. If it's some page that's changing all the time, things are changing, maybe it doesn't worth the automation.
Yeah, I agree with that, because even when we're talking about automation, we're talking about reusable code or reusable process that we are going to, we plan to use for maybe for a long period of time. And I agree with that because we had also project where they are working in an application, and they maybe are going to do a redesign in the next 6 months. So what is the point to start with automation in that with that application? In 6 months, your application totally will change. Maybe the code that will be reusable could be used or could not. So you need to analyze that, and it's when we need to do a really good analyze about the return of investment, if it's doable or not. So I agree with the point of Marco.
So it's great. It's everything that has to be conveyed to the business and everything that has to be conveyed to the manager who have this. I heard about this easy button since I started in testing. Honestly, it's this myth is going around about like one-click automation and we know everything. Yeah, never happened. In 20 years, never happened. But what I wanted to ask you next is, what is this new and shiny right now in automation? What's hot? What's like new tools in the market, new ideas? What is it? Share.
AI.
Yeah.
AI and machine learning. That's what appears to be the buzz right now. I was at a conference earlier this year, and a good chunk of the vendors had some sort of machine learning or AI associated with their tool. It's been added to the new versions of their tool. A lot of it was like 25% of the sessions had something to do directly or indirectly with AI. Everything from just sort of making maintenance easier to potentially helping you do your testing, and it's all over the place right now. But that's what I'm seeing is new and hot.
What else, you guys?
I'm kind of intrigued by all the recent advancements with for mobile testing around like native versus like device labs and kind of like how useful some of those things are getting and how they're hopefully trending to be a little bit more reliable using like Browser Stack or Sauce Labs and kind of what they have.
Cool. Thomas, what do you see?
Well, I mean, to piggyback on Kate, I think the infrastructure answer is one of those that companies are looking for from a cost perspective of using Browser Stack Sauce Labs. My company in particular, we work with Perfecto Mobile because we found that building out our infrastructure internally is not very cost effective and requires a great deal more maintenance rather than have a separate company handle our parallel execution for our digital applications, all of the combinations that are required for both web and native applications. And so that's something that will always have a place because it's just not something that's very feasible for most companies to support all the various browser OS device combinations. And I agree completely with the sort of advent of machine learning and artificial intelligence, not just from testing, but handling tasks. So my company, which typically takes a good deal of time before making an investment, jumped into a machine learning tool at the end of last year. And I initially wasn't even consulted. They were just all on board with this. And so now we have this new tool that we're using and trying to primarily use it for task-based automation to help out people in our phone bank and service desks and other areas of the bank where we look at inefficiencies. So I think that will, those three areas with the cloud-based services, machine learning, and AI are going to be the ones that will be a good focus for the years ahead.
Cool. Juan, what do you say?
I think also the machine learning and AI is right now the direction that the company would like to follow. Maybe there are a few information about that, or people start to do that. So it's really, well, right now that I am in my experience at this point, it's really hard to get people with that kind of experience, or maybe the sector is really, really small. But I think that there is the correct direction for. And also another thing is the people. Well, right now they want to start to at the beginning was the tester, now is that, and now they would like to start to use like DevOps tester. So I see a little bit of move on that in DevOps tester. So at the end, I think it's part of the same, but only they adding a little more tasks and they change the names. But I think that is some of the path for that.
Okay. And Marco, what do you see? What's hot?
Well, for sure, the buzz and the hot is artificial intelligence, but I would reinforce what Kate was saying, because I was impressed how mature and how we progress on mobile testing. Because if you see a couple of years ago was like artificial intelligence. Everybody said, oh, this is the thing, but nobody really implements it. And it's good to see that now mobile testing, it's really happening everywhere, almost everywhere. It's getting bigger and mature. So I think it's really good.
Cool. Do you guys, can you share some good advice? We have like 10 minutes left. Some good advice in test automation from your experience. Beware of that or something like this. Just give our listeners some hints on how to do it well.
So my favorite thing to talk about when it comes to doing it well is expanding the definition of what automation is. So often in the industry, if you talk to someone and say automation, they start asking about tools, how many test cases do you have, and such. But I think if we can broaden that definition into something that what I've been using for the last few years is a judicious application of technology to help humans do their job. In this case, the humans are testers, or more broadly, the delivery team. Then we can start looking at applying technology to things that are not directly test-based, like setup, like what we call automation assist. They'll go into high volume automated testing where you're running the same things over and over and over, and you're getting, looking for different types of errors, looking at all these types of help, collating results, looking for different things, tools and widgets. Using that as an umbrella term for automation can potentially provide additional value because, hey, it's great that we can write a smoke test that's going to run on every one of our deploys. That may be highly valuable, but it might be more valuable if first we wrote something to help us generate user IDs or configure the product with the right data configuration. That might save us more time day over day, week over week as the first thing we should automate.
Cool. Mark.
Okay, for me, I think if I would talk to somebody like what they should do or advice would be do what you like because this is the meaning, like it's your life. I think this is really important. Some people want to be a tester and just do manual tests. People want to go to automation. So you probably should do what you like. But what I do, then this is totally personal. I'm a really curious guy, and I want to learn as much as I can and be ahead of things that are going to come. And technology change, things change, and what I notice on the market is that every day that passes, companies want less people to do only manual things. And manual things is important, but they don't want a resource to do only manual things. They want to do other things. So to multitask, to automate, or have any variants inside our role. So I think don't be accommodate in your position. That's what I do, but this is totally personal.
Cool. Juan, what's your take? Some advice.
My advice also, and also it's advice for me that I always try to follow is not stay in the comfort zone. Try always to expand the knowledge and try to get more knowledge in everything, or at least in your area. For example, with test automation, if you are working with web, well, try to know about mobile. If you see that the the technology is moving to the AI or machine learning, well, try to start to look about what is that, or big data. Try to start to investigate and try to see another success stories for another companies or another coworkers, and try to see if you could apply it in your project. That kind of thing should be my advice. Always learn from the other people, and I think share your experience and get the knowledge for other experience to try to see it work for you.
And Kate, what's your advice?
So from the logistics perspective, I don't know if I'm okay to say this, but I had actually given a presentation a few years back on how to start automation, and basically like start small and don't go for perfect are like the two biggest things. I think in doing that, and in my role now, the other piece of advice would be about being kind to yourself. You might not know how to start. You might get stuck a whole bunch. But remember that there was a time before you knew how to test, and there was a time before you knew what you know now. And the important thing is to make progress and ask for help, and to feel good about asking for help, because you're going to learn from that. When I work on automation, when I've implemented automation, it's with people with all different backgrounds, systems, test, development, and it's because of all those great backgrounds that automation can be successful. So like, you know, I think the biggest lesson is just start doing it, and you will figure it out, because it's good. Parts of it are going to be hard, but it's always worth it to learn something new.
Thank you. And Thomas, what do you think? What's your advice?
Stay curious. If I can put in 2 words, stay curious. For the people who are new, and I often have people new ask me, what should I do? I say, don't marry yourself to one tool, but choose something that is popular to at least do a deep dive on, because there should be a lot of information, but then get the breadth in addition to your depth. For people who are existing in our field, you just have to stay curious, and you have to learn from what other folks are doing by attending conferences or professional groups, following blogs, YouTube videos, attending webinars such as this one to learn about what's going on in the community. So that way you don't get focused and hardened on a given set of ideas. So that way, when you're taking approach to a new problem, you're thinking about not can we automate this, but should we automate this, and the concerns around data, environment setup, the maintenance costs. These are the things that you need to learn from others about, and learn from your failures and share with others. So stay curious.
Cool. And Paul, did I ask you that question already? Or no?
Oh, me? Yeah, no, I went first, so I'm good. I can talk for an hour, but yeah, y'all will be tired of that one.
Okay, thank you guys so much for this wonderful roundtable. I learned a lot, and you know, if I learn a lot, then everybody else will learn a lot as well, because we're sitting there in our shells, kind of, and we need sharing this experience, ideas, you know, and thoughts and encouragement to push this industry forward. So I'm really looking forward to Contest NYC, to meet all of you. I know I met some of you, but not everyone, face to face. And I'm sure we're gonna have great time, because all of you are great, and you have so many ideas, and you have so much encouragement for people to just learn. And as Thomas said, stay curious, stay ahead of the curve. And with that, I'm gonna stop the recording, and we're gonna move into Slack to have Q&A, because I'm already asking questions. So we're gonna have a chat in the Slack in events channel, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Right.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.